On the busy streets of Chicago, 19-year-old Emma Lawson laid out her paintings at an art stand, hoping to sell at least a few of them. She was not just an artist. Art was her only chance to survive. Exhausted by her struggle with illness and financial difficulties, she did not expect a chance encounter to change her life. When a man in simple clothes and kind eyes approached her booth, she didn't know it was Keanu Reeves. What he did next amazed everyone and changed her life forever. The streets of Chicago were alive with their usual chaos. Honking taxis, hurried footsteps, and street performers entertaining the passing crowds. Among the bustling city life, 19-year-old Emma Lawson sat quietly beside a small folding table, her artwork displayed neatly in front of her. The sign beside her read, "Selling art to pay for cancer treatment." Emma had never imagined herself in this situation. Just a year ago, she was preparing to start art school, dreaming of painting full-time and making a name for herself in the Chicago art scene. But life had other plans. Her mother's voice still echoed in her head from the day they received the diagnosis. The doctors had been clear. Her treatment was possible, but without insurance, the cost would be overwhelming. Her mother had already drained their savings, and even working double shifts couldn't cover the mounting medical bills. Emma hated watching her mother struggle, and she hated feeling helpless even more. That's when she came up with an idea. If she couldn't work a normal job due to her illness, she would do the only thing she knew how: create. Selling her paintings wasn't just about raising money. It was about fighting back, about taking control of her own fate. The first few days were hard. People passed by her table, some barely sparing a glance, others offering sympathetic smiles, but nothing more. Occasionally, someone would stop, flip through her paintings, ask a few questions, and then walk away without buying anything. A woman in an expensive coat had seemed interested in one of Emma's sunset paintings, only to shake her head and say, "It's beautiful, but I don't have space for more art." "Good luck, dear." Emma forced a smile. "Thank you." But inside, she was exhausted. The summer heat was relentless, and sitting on the sidewalk all day had drained her both physically and emotionally. She had sold only 2 paintings in 3 days, barely enough for a single meal, let alone medical bills. By the 4th day, her hope was beginning to fade. Then something unexpected happened. A young journalist stopped by, intrigued by her story. She took a few pictures, asked Emma a couple of questions, and promised to write a feature about her on her popular art blog. Emma had no idea whether it would help, but she appreciated the effort. The next morning, everything changed. Emma arrived at her usual spot, expecting another slow day, but within an hour, people started approaching her with interest. Some had read the blog post and came specifically to buy a painting. Others had stumbled upon the story as it spread online. By the afternoon, she had sold more paintings in one day than she had in the entire past week combined. And then, the biggest surprise of all, a tall man in a black hoodie and jeans walked up to her table. He wore sunglasses, and his dark hair was slightly messy, as if he had been out all day. He moved with a quiet confidence, but there was nothing flashy about him. He blended in, just another pedestrian in the city crowd. "These are really good," he said, picking up a black and white painting of a lone figure standing against the city skyline. "You painted these?" Emma looked up and nodded. "Yeah, I try." The man studied the painting for a moment longer, then glanced at the sign explaining her situation. "How much for this one?" Emma hesitated. That one's $200. But honestly, anything helps." He smiled slightly and reached into his jacket pocket. "I think it's worth more than that." Before Emma could process what was happening, he pulled out a checkbook and started writing. When he handed it to her, her breath caught in her throat. The check was made out $4,100,000. Emma's hands trembled as she stared at the number. "No, I can't take this. That's too much." The man shook his head. "It's not charity. It's payment for a great piece of art." His voice was calm, kind. "And for your courage." It was then that she realized who he was. Kneeling in front of her table, casually handing her a check that would change her life, was Keanu Reeves. Emma sat frozen, staring at the check in her trembling hands. The numbers seemed unreal, as if her mind was playing tricks on her. She looked up at Keanu Reeves, her voice caught at her throat. I don't know what to say. Keanu offered a small, reassuring smile. You don't have to say anything. Just keep painting. The reality of the moment was overwhelming. She had spent days under the harsh Chicago sun, hoping for enough sales to cover even a small portion of her medical bills. And now, in a matter of seconds, everything had changed. But even as gratitude flooded her chest, doubt crept in. This is too much, she whispered. I can't accept this. Keanu's expression remained kind, but firm. It's not too much. Your art speaks to people. It speaks to me, and I can afford to support someone who deserves a shot. He glanced at the painting in his hand, then back at her. Consider it an investment in your future. A small crowd had begun to gather, whispering excitedly as they recognized the actor. Phones were lifted, capturing the interaction, but Keanu seemed completely unfazed by the attention. To him, this wasn't about making a public gesture. It was about helping someone in need. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat and took a deep breath. I don't even know how to thank you. Keanu chuckled softly. No need. Just keep making beautiful things. He carefully tucked the painting under his arm. And maybe one day I'll see your work in a gallery. Before Emma could respond, one of the onlookers stepped forward. Wait, are you really selling these to help pay for medical bills? Emma nodded hesitantly. The man turned to his companion. That's incredible. We should get one. Another person spoke up. Yeah, me too. Suddenly, more people began approaching her table, flipping through the remaining paintings, asking about prices. The energy shifted, and in an instant, Emma wasn't just an artist struggling to sell her work. She was the artist who had captured the attention of Keanu Reeves. One woman, holding up a canvas of a vibrant sunset, smiled at Emma. I'll take this one, and keep the change. She handed over $500. Another man quickly grabbed 2 paintings. I'll buy these, he said, shoving a wad of cash into Emma's hands before she could even count it. Emma barely had time to process what was happening. In the span of minutes, more paintings sold than in the entire past week. The people who had walked by indifferently before were now eager to support her. The kindness of one stranger had ignited a chain reaction. Keanu gave her a final nod before slipping his sunglasses back on. Looks like you've got a busy afternoon ahead, he said. I'll let you get to it. Emma felt an overwhelming rush of emotion, gratitude, disbelief, and a deep sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. As Keanu disappeared into the city crowd, she realized something profound. Her life had just changed forever. The days that followed were unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. News of Keanu Reeves' generous act spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with posts and videos capturing the moment. Overnight, Emma became known as the struggling artist whose life had been changed by an unexpected act of kindness. Messages flooded her inbox. People from all over the country, and even from different parts of the world, reached out, wanting to buy her artwork, donate to her medical fund, or simply share words of encouragement. The overwhelming support was both exhilarating and terrifying. One morning, as she sat in her small apartment, scrolling through emails, her mother walked in, a look of disbelief on her face. Emma, you need to see this. She handed Emma her phone. It was a news article from a major media outlet featuring a picture of her sitting at her art stand, with Keanu Reeves holding one of her paintings. The headline read, Hollywood star surprise gift transforms young artist's life. Emma's hands trembled as she read the article. It recounted her story, from her battle with illness to the moment Keanu had written that life-changing check. It also mentioned the flood of support that had come her way since then. Her mother smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. You did it, sweetheart. People are listening. But with fame came new challenges. Emma's phone rang constantly. Reporters, news stations, and art collectors all wanted to speak with her. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. All she had ever wanted was to sell enough paintings to pay for her treatment, and now it felt like the entire world was watching. Later that day, her best friend, Ava, stopped by with coffee. You need to set some boundaries, she said, placing the cups on the table. People are going to want a piece of your story, and you can't let them take advantage of you. Emma nodded. I know, but I don't want to ignore the people who are genuinely trying to help. Ava smiled. Then focus on what matters most. your health, and your art. Taking her friend's advice to heart, Emma decided to channel her energy into painting. She spent hours in her small studio, creating new pieces inspired by the whirlwind of emotions she had experienced. She painted the moment Keanu had handed her the check, the faces of strangers who had supported her, and the hope she now felt for the future. Within a week, she had enough paintings for a small gallery show. With the money she had received, she rented out a local art space and invited the people who had supported her from the beginning. To her surprise, the event was packed. Collectors, local artists, and even a few celebrities attended, eager to see the work of the girl whose story had touched so many. As she stood in the center of the room, watching people admire her paintings, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: pride. This wasn't just about selling art to survive anymore. This was about sharing her story, her resilience, and her passion with the world. Toward the end of the night, her phone buzzed with a new message. She glanced at the screen and felt her breath catch. It was from Keanu. Keanu ***, I heard about your gallery show. Congratulations. You earned this, ***. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. She typed back a simple reply. **Thank you. For everything, ***. As she looked around at the people celebrating her success, she realized that this was just the beginning. Her journey wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, she knew she wasn't facing it alone. In the weeks following her gallery show, Emma's life continued to transform in ways she never could have imagined. Her story had become an inspiration to many, and her paintings were now in high demand. Orders flooded in from collectors and art lovers worldwide, eager to own a piece of her work. But even as her career flourished, Emma remained focused on the reason she had started all of this: her health. With the money from her art sales and Keanu's generous donation, she was finally able to afford the full course of treatment she desperately needed. Every hospital visit, every procedure, every medication was now covered. For the first time in months, she no longer had to live in constant fear of medical bills piling up. Instead, she could focus on healing. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emma sat in her apartment, working on a new piece when she received an unexpected call. The number was unfamiliar, but she answered anyway. "Hello, Emma. This is Michael Rodriguez from the Chicago Art Foundation," the voice on the other end said. "We've been following your journey, and we'd love to offer you a spot in our upcoming Rising Artists exhibition." Emma nearly dropped her paintbrush. "Wait, seriously?" Michael chuckled. "Absolutely. Your work has moved so many people, and we believe you have something truly special to share. This would be a great opportunity to showcase your art to some of the biggest names in the industry." Emma's heart pounded. A professional exhibition? She had dreamed of a moment like this, but she had never imagined it would come so soon. I would love to," she stammered. "Thank you so much." As the call ended, she sat in stunned silence. This was happening. Her art was no longer just a means of survival. It was becoming her future. The weeks leading up to the exhibition were a whirlwind. Emma spent long hours in her studio, pouring every emotion, every struggle, and every triumph into her work. When the day of the event finally arrived, she could hardly believe her eyes. The exhibition hall was stunning, filled with carefully curated pieces from up-and-coming artists like herself. As she walked through the gallery, she spotted familiar faces: her mother, Ava, and even some of the strangers who had bought her paintings on the street, all gathered to support her. But one person's presence caught her completely off guard. Keanu Reeves. Dressed simply as always, he stood near one of her paintings, studying it with quiet admiration. Emma's breath hitched. She hadn't expected him to come, but there he was. Summoning her courage, she approached him. "Didn't think you'd show up," she said with a small smile. Keanu turned to her, returning the smile. "I wouldn't miss it." He gestured toward the painting he had been looking at. It was a piece she had titled The Journey, a depiction of a lone figure standing at a crossroads, staring out at an endless horizon. "This one," Keanu said, "feels like a beginning." Emma nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "That's exactly what it is." As the exhibition continued, more people stopped to admire her work, and even a few gallery owners approached her with interest in representing her art. But for Emma, the most meaningful moment had already happened, standing beside the man who had believed in her when she needed it most, knowing that she had finally stepped into the life she was meant to have. That night, as the event came to a close, Keanu handed her a small envelope. "A little something to keep you going," he said with a wink before disappearing into the crowd. When she opened it later, she found a handwritten note inside. "Never stop creating. The world needs your art. Keanu, ***. Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched the note to her chest. This was only the beginning. The months after the Rising Artists exhibition were a whirlwind of change for Emma. Her name was now recognized in the art world, and opportunities poured in from places she had only dreamed about. Galleries reached out, collectors sought her work, and art enthusiasts from across the country wanted a piece of her journey. But through all the excitement, she never forgot why she had started painting in the first place. Her health had improved significantly. With access to the best treatments, she was getting stronger every day. The weight of uncertainty that had once hung over her was now replaced with something new: hope. And as she stood in her now fully stocked and organized studio, she realized that her art was no longer just about survival. It was about expression, about telling stories, and about giving back. One morning, while working on a new collection, her phone buzzed with a familiar name: Keanu Reeves. She picked up, her heart pounding slightly. "Keanu." "Emma." His voice was warm. "I was just checking in. How's the art world treating you?" She smiled, glancing around at the canvases surrounding her. "Better than I ever imagined. And it's all thanks to you." "You give me too much credit," he chuckled. "You had the talent and the determination. I just helped shine a light on it." They spoke for a while, catching up on everything that had happened since the exhibition. As the conversation neared its end, Keanu hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Emma, I have an idea." She leaned forward, intrigued. "I'm listening." "I know your journey started with selling art to pay for your treatment," he said. "But what if you could do something similar for others?" The words settled in her mind. "You mean, use my art to help people?" "Exactly," Keanu said. "I know a few organizations that support young artists struggling with medical expenses. If you're interested, we could put together an event, an auction, maybe, where proceeds go to helping others in need." Emma felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so long fighting her own battle that she hadn't stopped to think about how many others were in the same situation. And now, she had the means to make a difference. "I'd love to," she said, her voice firm. "Let's do it." The next few months were spent planning. With Keanu's help, Emma connected with charities and foundations dedicated to providing medical support to struggling artists. The idea of an art auction took shape, and soon, it became bigger than either of them had expected. The event was held in a grand gallery in Los Angeles, attended by collectors, philanthropists, and fellow artists. Some of Emma's most personal works were on display, along with pieces donated by other rising talents. Keanu himself was present, not as a celebrity, but as a supporter of the cause. By the end of the night, they had raised over $500,000, a sum that would go directly toward helping young artists get the treatment they needed. As Emma stood before the crowd to give a small speech, she found herself overwhelmed with gratitude. "A year ago, I was sitting on a sidewalk, hoping to sell a painting to pay for my next round of treatment. I didn't know if I had a future. But because of one act of kindness, I'm standing here today, not just as a survivor, but as someone who can give back. And that's what tonight is about, proving that no one should have to fight alone." The audience erupted in applause. Keanu stood near the back, watching with a proud smile. That night, as Emma packed up, he walked over and handed her another small envelope. "Another note?" she teased. He smirked. "Just a little something. Open it later." When she got home, she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single slip of paper with 4 words written in Keanu's neat handwriting. "You are the light." Tears welled up in her eyes, because for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. And her journey was just beginning.